Mario Draghi.
Well, good morning to everybody. This, in a sense, is the first time that I have the opportunity to start sharing with you the overall, I wouldn't say philosophy, we are not there yet, but how the design and the philosophy of this report is shaping out. For a long time, competitiveness has been a contentious issue for Europe. In 1994, the economist-to-be Nobel Prize Paul Krugman called focusing on competitiveness a dangerous obsession. His argument was that long-term growth comes from raising productivity, which benefits everyone, rather than through trying to improve your relative position against others and capture their share of growth. The approach we took to competitiveness in Europe after the sovereign debt crisis seemed to prove his point. We pursued a deliberate strategy of trying to lower wage costs relative to each other, and combine this together with a procyclical fiscal policy. The net effect was only to weaken our own domestic demand and undermine our social model. But the key issue is not that competitiveness is a flawed concept. It is that Europe has had the wrong focus. We've turned inwards, seeing our competitors as ourselves, even in sectors like defense and energy, where we have profound common interests. At the same time, we have not looked outwards enough. With a positive trade balance, after all, we didn't see our external competitiveness as a serious policy question. In a benign international environment, we trusted in the global level playing field and the rules-based international order, expecting that others would do the same. But now the world is changing rapidly, and it has caught us by surprise. Most importantly, other regions are no longer playing by the rules and are actively devising policies to enhance their competitive position. At best, these policies are designed to redirect investment towards their own economies at the expense of ours. At the worst, they are designed to make us permanently dependent on them. China, for example, is aiming to capture and internalize all parts of the supply chain in green and advanced technologies, and is securing the access to the required resources. This rapid supply expansion is leading to significant overcapacity in multiple sectors and threatening to undercut our industries. The United States, for its part, are using large-scale industrial policy to attract high-value domestic manufacturing capacity within their borders, including that of European firms, while using protectionism to shut out competitors and deploying its geopolitical power to reorient and secure supply chains. We have never had an equivalent industrial deal at the European Union level, even though the Commission has been doing everything in its power to fill this gap. As such, despite a number of positive initiatives that are underway, we are still lacking an overall strategy for how to respond in multiple areas. We are lacking a strategy for how to keep pace in an increasing cutthroat race for leadership in new technologies. Today, we invest less in digital and advanced technologies than the US and China, including for defense, and we only have 4 global European tech players among the top 50 worldwide. We are lacking a strategy for how to shield our traditional industries from an unlevel global playing field caused by asymmetries in regulations, subsidies, and trade policies. Energy-intensive industries are a case in point. In other regions, these industries not only face lower energy costs, but they also face a lower regulatory burden. And in some cases, they are receiving massive subsidies, which directly threat the ability of European firms to compete. Without strategically designed and coordinated policy actions, it is logical that some of our industries will shut down capacity or relocate outside the European Union. And we are lacking a strategy to ensure that we have the resources and inputs we need to fulfill our ambitions without increasing our dependencies. We rightly have an ambitious climate policy agenda in Europe and hard targets for electric vehicles. But in a world where our rivals control many of the resources we need, such an agenda has to be combined with a plan to secure our supply chain, from critical minerals to batteries to charging infrastructure. Our response is being constrained because our organization, decision-making, and financing are designed for the world of yesterday, pre-COVID, pre-Ukraine, pre-conflagration in the Middle East, pre the return of great power rivalry. But we need a European Union that is fit for today's and tomorrow's world. And so what I'm proposing in the report that the President of the Commission asked me to prepare is radical change, but that is what is needed. Ultimately, we will need to achieve transformation across the European economy. We need to be able to rely on decarbonized and independent energy systems, an integrated and adequate EU-based defense system, domestic manufacturing in the most innovative and fast-growing sectors, and a leading position in the deep tech and digital innovation that is close to our manufacturing bases. But with our competitors moving fast, we must also assess priorities. Immediate actions are needed in the sectors with the highest exposure to green, digital, and security challenges. In my report, we are focusing on 10 of these macro sectors in the European economy. Each sector requires specific reforms and tools. Yet, in our analysis, there are 3 emerging common threads for policy interventions. The first common thread is enabling scale. Our major competitors are taking advantage of the fact that they are continental-sized economies to generate scale, increase investment, and capture market share for the industries where it matters most. We have the same natural size advantage in Europe, but fragmentation is holding us back. In the defense industry, for example, lack of scale is hampering the development of a European industrial capacity, which is a problem acknowledged also in the recent European Defense Industrial Strategy. The top 5 players in the United States represent 80% of its larger market, where in Europe they constitute only 45%. The difference arises in large part because EU defense spending is fragmented. Governments do not procure much together. Collaborative procurement accounts for less than 20% of spending, and they do not focus enough on our own market. Almost 80% of procurement over the last 2 years has been from outside the European Union. To meet new defense and security needs, we need to step up our joint procurement, increase the coordination of our spending and the interoperability of our equipment, and substantially reduce our international dependencies. Another example where we are not making use of scale is telecommunications. We have a market of 445 million consumers in the European Union, but investment per capita is only half of that in the United States. And we are lagging in 5G and fiber deployment. One reason for this gap is that we have 34 mobile network groups in Europe. And by the way, 34 is a conservative estimate. We have, in fact, many more, but 34 are the consolidated groups figure. So we have 34 mobile network groups in Europe, often operating only at national scale, versus 3 in the United States and 4 in China. To produce more investment, we need to streamline and further harmonize telecoms regulations across member states and support, not hamper, consolidation. And scale is crucial also in a different way for young companies that generate the most innovative ideas. Their business model depends on being able to grow fast and commercialize their ideas, which in turn requires a large domestic market. And scale is also essential for developing new innovative medicines through the standardization of the European Union patients' data and the use of artificial intelligence, which needs all this wealth of data we have, if only they could be standardized. In Europe, we are traditionally very strong in fundamental research, but we are failing to bring innovation to market and upscale it. We could address this barrier by, among other things, reviewing current prudential regulation in bank lending and setting up a new common regulatory regime for startups in tech. The second thread is providing public goods. Where there are investments from which we all benefit, but no country can carry out alone, there is a powerful case for us to act together. Otherwise, we will underdeliver relative to our needs. We'll underdeliver in climate and defense, for example, but in other sectors as well. There are several choke points in the European economy where lack of coordination means that investment is inefficiently low. Energy grids, and in particular interconnections, are one such example. They are a clear public good, as an integrated energy market will lower energy costs for our firms and make us more resilient in the face of future crises, a goal that the Commission is pursuing in the context of the Repower EU. But interconnections require decisions on planning, financing, procurement of materials, and governance that are difficult to coordinate, And so we will not be able to build a true energy union unless we agree on a common approach. Another example is our supercomputing infrastructure. The EU has a public network of high-performance computers, which is world-class, world-class. But the spillovers to the private sector are currently very, very limited. This network could be used by the private sector for example, artificial intelligence startups and SMEs. And in return, the financial benefits received could be reinvested to upgrade high-power computers and support an EU cloud expansion. Once we identify these public goods, we also need to give ourselves the means to finance them. The public sector has an important role to play, and I've spoken before about how we can better use the joint borrowing capacity of the EU, especially in areas like defense, where fragmented spending reduces our overall effectiveness. But most of the investment gap will need to be covered by private investment. The EU has very high private savings, but they are mostly funneled into bank deposits and do not end up financing growth as much as they could in a larger capital market. This is why advancing the Capital Markets Union is an indispensable part of the overall competitiveness strategy. The third thread is securing the supply of essential resources and inputs. If we are to carry out our climate ambitions without increasing our dependence on countries on whom we can no longer rely, we need a comprehensive strategy covering all stages of the critical mineral supply chain. We are currently largely leaving this space to private actors, while other governments are directly leading or strongly coordinating the whole chain. We need a foreign economic policy that delivers the same for our economy. The Commission has already started this process with the Critical Raw Materials Act, but we need complementary measures to make its target more tangible. For example, we could envisage a dedicated EU critical mineral platform, primarily for joint procurement, secure diversified supply, the pooling of financing, and stockpiling. Another crucial input which we need to secure, and this is particularly relevant to you, the social partners, is our supply of skilled workers. In the European Union, three-quarters of companies report difficulties in recruiting employees with the right skills, while 28 occupations representing 14% of our workforce are currently identified as having labor shortages. With aging societies and a less favorable attitudes towards immigration, we will need to find these skills internally. Multiple stakeholders will need to work together to ensure the relevance of skills and shape flexible upskilling pathways. One of the most important players in this regard will be you. You've always been crucial. You've always been crucial in times of change, and Europe will rely on you to help adapt our labor market to the digital age and empower our workers. These three threads require us to think deeply about how we organize ourselves, what we want to do together, and what we want to keep at the national level. But given the urgency of the challenge we face, we don't have the luxury of delaying the answers to all these important questions until the next treaty change. To ensure coherence between different policy tools, we should be able to develop now a new strategic tool for the coordination of economic policies. And if we are to find that this is not feasible, in specific cases, we should be ready to consider going forward with a subset of member states. For example, enhanced cooperation in the form of a 28th regime could be a way forward for the CMU, for the Capital Market Union, to mobilize investments. But as a rule, I believe that the political cohesion of our union demands that we act together, possibly always. But we've got to be aware that the same political cohesion is now being threatened by the changes in the rest of the world. Restoring our competitiveness is not something we can achieve alone or only by beating each other. It requires us to act as a European Union in a way we never have before. Our rivals are still in a march on us because they can act as one country with one strategy and align all the necessary tools and policies behind it. And if we are to match them, we will need a renewed partnership among member states, a redefine of our union that is no less ambitious than what the founding fathers did 70 years ago with the creation of the European coal and steel community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, and keep up the excellent work. We are looking forward to your report later this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.